Let's start by, first of all, talking a little bit about you, your background. You're a professional photographer.
Ended up in Omaha, went to a bar called the Mac. Probably get me a job as a waiter or something like that. Lo and behold, the man was Larry King. I had no idea who he was. It was just a whirlwind. He had all this money and power. And within a couple days, I was off on a private jet.
When you say important people, Rusty, are you talking about political?
It went all the way up to the White House. These people were leaders of industry. They were doing things that I did not feel was right. Who would you go tell? Because they pulled the puppet strings. There was one instance where Colonel Michael Aquino came to a motel room and he got from Larry King a suitcase, and it was filled with bearer bonds and cash. There was millions of dollars in that thing. It was for the Iran-Contras. Embassy Row in Washington, D.C. They had parties there. On the surface, they looked like all up and up. Then the party was over with, and there'd be a few guys that would stay after. They would have a sex party. This was at King's house.
Okay. How could this man afford Learjets, lavish parties, and also renting a mansion on Embassy Row in D.C.?
He would find clients. Prey would be a better word for it.
Mm-hmm.
They went to this church and hit him up for $1.8 million. Well, there was a set of nuns that he got a bunch of money from, a couple $1 million. There was Boys Town and various other organizations. Everybody doesn't know what goes on at Boys Town.
As I recall, Rusty, the Boys Town was one of King's primary recruiting grounds for young boys and girls.
Very much so. I believe the man who's running it now is Father Val Peter. Not a good choice.
Okay. Why is that?
He was up to his elbows in this. What they were doing is providing sexual favors to
whoever had money or political influence.
King told them to. Usually it was done for the purpose of compromising somebody. It didn't take me very long to figure out that they had two sets of books going. I knew that was wrong. One of the things that really made me worry about how to get out was the fact that I'd seen Robert Wadman.
He was the chief of the Omaha Police Department.
Yes.
Wadman was pretty deeply involved in abuse of the kids, was he not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the girls that he frequented was Alicia Owen.
Okay. I do remember that Alicia Owen's allegation was that Chief Wadman had made her pregnant.
He covered up so much stuff. You know, Larry flew little kids all over the country for people to be sex toys for people with perverse needs.
You know, I heard that there were some in the neighborhood of at least 80 people.
He got kids from all over the country. A lot of them came from Boys Town or orphanages or places where they'd really not be missed. He also cataloged kids. He'd pick them to order.
Okay. It became known popularly as the Franklin cover-up, and Senator John DeCamp, a state senator in Nebraska, was on the banking committee, as was Senator Lauren Schmidt. This started out as a banking investigation into the Franklin Credit Union, which was being directed at the time by a man named Larry King, not the Larry King of talk show fame, but a gentleman who apparently was very big in Republican politics, not only at the state level, but he sang at the inauguration of I think it was Reagan, wasn't it?
It was 1984 and 88.
84 and 88. And he was also head of the Black Republican Caucus. This guy was a mover and shaker in Republican politics. And what started out as a banking investigation quickly led into this area of human trafficking, prostitution, pornography, and drugs, I think, as I understand it as well. And more. And more. And now what's going on here is King was arrested and ultimately charged with embezzlement and not anything at all to do with all of this other stuff. So what we're doing now is we're kind of talking about the real action that was going on here. Let me ask you this. You were talking about him paying Wadman, Chief Wadman of the Omaha Police Department, who, by the way, is long gone from there, as I understand
he's out teaching law in Utah.
Yeah. Where was King getting $50,000 a week to pay Wadman?
Well, he was making his money supposedly off these restaurants and that. But what he was doing is he would hit up these churches or whoever else, and he'd tell them to write it to account number 888888.
Okay.
Which was his account.
His account, okay.
He would pay the interest on it to whoever the group was or the person investing it.
Right.
And when it came time to renew it, if nothing else worked, he'd offer him 0.25% more interest.
Did any of this other money that he was paying Wadman, did any of it come from other criminal activities?
I don't doubt one bit. It was nothing unusual for Larry King to have $1 million on his American Express card in a month.
Wow.
And pay it off. And the way Larry put it was, this is so bizarre that nobody will ever believe you if you told them.
Mm-hmm.
When I got into this, I had no idea. I thought I was working for somebody legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time that I realized that it was not on the up and up, it was to the point to where what I'd seen would have probably brought me in as an accessory, even though I had no involvement in it.
Yeah.
Who do you go tell?
Right.
Because, you see the chief of police taking money. He's rubbing elbows with all these powerful people. He had a daycare center in Omaha that he ran as a nonprofit.
Are you talking about King?
Yeah, Larry King did.
Okay.
And the guy that owned the building got wind of what Larry was doing and basically boarded up the doors.
What was Larry doing at the daycare center?
Oh, he was finding kids.
Okay.
And he would go rent them out, whether it be for himself or for others.
How did they get that past the parents, for example?
A lot of them were orphaned street kids. He'd say, well, my son's having a party, a sleepover, or something like that. His wife, her parents were doctors in where else but the Cayman Islands.
Oh, boy.
Okay, there's 2 places left in the world where you can hide money, and that's Belize and the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of the money ended up going.
What were you involved in?
Well, I was his photographer, and I shot the parties. He would have these $5,000 and $10,000 a plate fundraisers. He had me made over. One morning, he spent $4,800 on clothes for me.
Yeah.
And he went as far as to have my hair cut, colored, and permed by Nancy Reagan's hairdresser.
Okay.
$2,000 hairdo.
Wow.
Yep. Didn't blink an eye at it. The things that I was shooting would be these parties. Lo and behold, he had another photographer that was shooting the kiddie porn, the gay porn, the snuff films.
Snuff films.
I did say snuff films. That's where they would actually kill somebody.
Okay.
And have it on film. They would sell the tapes to these wealthy business people for tremendous amounts of money. This is where I got approached on various occasions to do these things, and I wanted no part of them. And one person of which was the late Hunter Thompson.
Really? So Hunter Thompson approached you about doing a snuff film?
Yep.
Okay.
He was introduced to me by Larry King, and he offered me $100,000 to shoot a snuff film. Or actually, Larry offered it to me, but it was through him.
Yeah.
Larry really pressured me to do it, and I wouldn't do it. And he had this other photographer who was doing these things for him. And I saw the other photographer on 3 different occasions. One of them, I even got to go talk to him. The guy had the same build that I had, pretty much a little bit slighter, but he just happened to have the same curly, dark hair that mine had been made up to be.
What do you attribute that to?
What they were doing.
Are they framing you?
Yes. I was their scapegoat. They were passing me off at the parties where the families and all the attention was at. He would have one party that was the social gathering. You bring the wife, sometimes even the kids. Then after that, there would be a few people that would stick around or come back, and they would have a separate party. And that was these sex parties. Your wildest dreams and worst nightmares. Yes, that's what went on.
Wow.
They would get these kids from the street. He'd offer them a life, and they didn't realize that he was going to take it.
Well, how much was drugs involved in all this?
Very much.
From what standpoint?
There was a party that I was at in Washington, D.C. on Embassy Row where he had the table laid out like you would a fine buffet. Well, they had little salt dishes, with razor blades and spoons and with, the little straw on them.
Yeah.
And a bowl full of cocaine in a punch bowl.
And again, these are people, politicians and people like that who are attending these parties and partaking in this.
One of them, there was what I was told was the Secret Service was there.
Mm-hmm.
I never seen any identification, but I was told it was Secret Service.
Yeah.
And they secured the entire house, and there was a presidential limousine there.
Really? Yeah. Did you see the president at the time at all in any of these instances?
Yeah, I'd seen the president.
Which president was it?
Reagan.
Reagan
had been there.
Okay.
And I'd seen the Bushes. There were various people that I'd seen. The one that's sitting in the White House right now.
Okay.
I would not trust that man with anything. He's a snake in the grass.
Okay.
Lo and behold on that, sorry to inform you people that like him, but if you knew what I knew about him.
Yeah.
There was a lot of these things that went on, and it was really a shame because you couldn't get anything done about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing is, if you told somebody, you may be telling the wrong person.
Yeah.
And it would leak up, whatever, and you may find yourself dead. You may find family members dead, hurting, whatever. I've been shot at 3 times. I was riding my bike in Portland, Oregon, and I got intentionally hit by a car. They drove by about 50 miles an hour and opened their back door and hit me.
Wow.
Okay, I got epilepsy out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is what I have to deal with.
Yeah. And
that just because I went to work for somebody in good faith.
Yeah.
And ended up seeing way more than I ever wanted to or dreamed of.
Mm-hmm. How many children or young people that were involved in this, how many of them do you think were utilized in snuff films? Was there a lot done, or was this something that was a rare occasion?
It happened, but the thing was I have no idea how many actually got made. Because they would go to so many different places. It was nothing unusual for Larry to be on a private jet 2, 3, 4 days out of a week. And, he could be anywhere. And, some of these things were cloaked in secrecy because a lot of them were instigated out of FAC. That's the Air Force Base in Omaha. That's Strategic Air Command.
What did they have to do with it?
That's where a lot of the MK Ultra things went on, the mind control.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about that, because when you say the mind control, now how familiar were you with Paul Benassi?
I testified at his trial against Larry King, where he won the $1 million judgment.
This is the civilian lawsuit that Benassi filed against him, right?
Yeah. I think it was February 5th of 1999 in Judge Warren Urban's court.
Okay.
I knew Paul. I wasn't really close to him.
Yeah.
But, I knew of him. That's pretty much the way most of the people I knew in Larry's organization, I knew of them, but I didn't want to get close to any of them.
Right, okay.
A lot of the kids were brought in. They were either drugged or they'd take them through this MK Ultra and do the mind control. Larry was very good at that.
Now, and you say that the SAC base, Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, that was a facility where they took these kids?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Air Force Base, because I know Paul Benassi talked, quite extensively about stuff that he'd been through. He was also, from what I understand, the psychiatrist that looked at him. He was himself a multiple personality, had been traumatized, and these compartmentalized personalities had been set up in him from when he was just a child. He claimed that he had been taken to Offutt Air Force Base. Did he not?
Yeah. When I was with Larry and we went out to Offutt, what struck me funny was he would go right through the guard shack. They didn't stop him for anything. Didn't matter who he had with him.
Okay. So it kind of implies that he was well known there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Rusty, in your time with him around Larry King, did you ever see or know about any kind of cooperation that he may have had with any kind of government agencies, i.e. CIA or any of these other agencies that might be involved in some kind of covert activity?
Oh, yeah. Michael Aquino was a colonel in, Army or...
He was in the Army.
He had various ties to, like you said, the CIA
Mm-hmm.
and the FBI, things like that.
Yeah.
Getting back to that daycare center I was telling you about.
Yeah.
The guy boarded up the doors,
Mm-hmm.
and we were on a private jet to Washington. And he called Wadman, and it was beyond his hands by that time. And the sheriffs, he called them trying to get it opened up. They didn't want to touch it. State Patrol didn't want to touch it. So he was upset.
Mm-hmm.
And he called Reagan direct. And I sat there and listened to the phone call.
Yeah.
And I could hear it because I was just right next to him. And it was open within 20 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he had the juice.
Oh, he had the juice.
Mm-hmm. King was also involved in kidnapping.
Oh, yeah.
What knowledge do you have of that?
They'd have what they call catalog kids.
Mm-hmm.
They would basically just go out driving around looking for kids.
Uh-huh.
And they would take pictures of them and go to these wealthy, influential people and say, would you be interested in this one or that one or the next one?
Mm-hmm.
And they would basically go snatch them.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what happened to Johnny Gosch.
So Johnny Gosch was definitely part of this orbit in his selection and kidnapping.
Yeah.
All right. What was done with Johnny? Do you know what was done with him?
He was basically made into a sex slave.
Yeah.
Put him down like in a basement or somewhere and hide him out of the way and get them moved from one place to another.
Mm-hmm.
It gets to the point to where when you have a captive person, they're angry and frustrated at first, so they basically confine them or drug them.
Yeah.
And then they get to the point to where this person is craving personal interaction.
Right.
To where there's no other people around but the people who have made them captive.
Right.
And they get to the point to where they actually start liking the person.
Kind of like the Stockholm Syndrome, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they know this when they take these kids.
Yeah.
It's a psychological game. The military uses this a lot to where the MK Ultra and things like that, they have ways to actually split a personality. Paul Bonacci, if I remember right, he has 13 different personalities. I've seen a few of them. It's bizarre because you're sitting here, you're talking to this person, and it's a whole other person you're talking to.
Yeah.
But yet it's the same body. It's kind of eerie, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about the investigation itself and some of the stuff that went on with DeCamp and Senator Schmidt. Gary Caradori, who was a retired Nebraska highway patrolman, went into private investigative work, was hired by the committee to investigate this stuff. Caradori died in a plane crash. What do you know about that? And what do you know about some of these photographs that allegedly exist concerning very important people?
They were mine.
Oh, they were?
Yes.
Okay. What were they photographs of?
They were photographs showing various kids being with these influential people. Enough so to where it would prove that if they were missing or something, that where they were at, and get a lot of questions going.
Okay.
And raise a lot of eyebrows.
Okay.
There was names, there was dates to go with the faces.
Okay.
And that's what was on the plane. I was very reluctant about working with him.
Were you the contact that he flew to Chicago to meet?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the first time I've said anything publicly about that.
All right.
I'm probably one of the last people to see him live.
You delivered what to him? He flew up with his 8-year-old son on the plane he flew up to Chicago with his 8-year-old son on the plane.
Yes.
Met with you.
I gave him pictures, dates, places, my memoirs while I was going through this. I was meticulous about keeping notes.
I'd imagine for your protection.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
I used to keep a diary. It was an assortment of things that would tie in a lot of people. For instance, what I've been told, there are 23 children that have been to the White House very quietly. The after-hours tours, yes, they do have them. And the kids that would go there would never be seen again. And they may go a few times or that, but it was all hush-hush. Yeah. When they were done with them, it was done.
And you never saw them again?
Nope.
Can you speculate on what you think might have happened to them?
I would bet they're probably with the fishes.
In DeCamp's book, I think he references the fact that you'd made a statement that something about if for photographs, I guess, or the knowledge that you had, some people would die if they didn't get their hands on those photographs or something to that effect.
Oh yeah, some people have died because of my photographs. I feel very badly about that.
Yeah.
Gary Caradori and his son. I believe his son was like 10 years old, Brian.
Yeah.
And Gary had no idea what he was getting when I came up, and I didn't want him anywhere near where I was at. So we met in Chicago.
Yeah.
And what was really strange about this is his plane supposedly, quote, quote, broke apart over Aurora, Illinois.
Yeah.
Which happens to be the town where Chief Wadman happened to be the police chief after he was run out of Omaha.
Really?
Yes.
So Caradori's plane comes down over Aurora, Illinois. I remember it crashes into a farmer's field.
Yep.
Photographs and everything are blowing all over the place, and the police show up, FBI shows up, and everything is confiscated, and the farmer is threatened.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The deputy got out there, and he was there only a couple minutes, and the FBI shows up. And they flat out threatened him, and they told him, you did not see anything, you do not tell anybody, you keep it quiet. Well, about a year later, he started to talk about it a little bit. His wife was murdered.
Really?
Yeah.
Good heavens. So, wow. This is an incredible story, Rusty. How much did Satanism play into the picture there? Was that a big part of it? What was it all about?
A lot of that centered around Michael Aquino. The Omaha World Herald was run by Harold Anderson.
Okay.
He had a farm place outside of Omaha, and they would go out and have various things out at that farm. Okay.
You're talking about ritualistic kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of the kids were brought out there, the ones that were kidnapped. You know, that farmhouse played an important role.
So you'd surreptitiously shoot photographs?
Yes, I would do it for the purpose of basically having to protect my own butt. What Gary Caradori got killed over was those pictures. The pictures I was getting were to get basically who's who and what's what. The kids they'd get them tutored up, and boys on boys, old men with boys. Occasionally they'd have girls. It was a lot of times the younger ones.
What about Warren Buffett?
Warren was in more than he would like to be known.
Yeah. Because I know DeCamp, his name shows up in DeCamp's book.
Yeah.
And of course everybody knows who Warren Buffett is.
Yep.
But he was involved in this level of this kind of stuff that was going on?
Yeah. You know, there's a few things going on right now that I personally know of that for investigations and things like that I cannot disclose. You will be hearing some things come in the very near future.
Okay, all right.
That are major.
Major?
Major.
Can you comment on what area they may be major in?
The who's who. The people who were involved in it, there's going to be heads roll. It goes way, way, way high. I probably said more than I should have at this point on that. People can look forward to a few things coming in the near future.
All right. Let's spend a little bit of time now talking about when you departed.
I was out in Washington, D.C., and Larry had sold me for the night. I was up in my room, and a guy walks in, and he came over to get friendly and friendlier, and I go, well, what are you doing? And he says, oh, well, Larry sold you to me for the night. And I'm going, what? And he says, yeah, you're mine. And I said, well, let me go freshen up, you know, and I went in the bathroom, and luckily I'd left my clothes in the bathroom. And I ended up crawling out and going to the airport. I left camera equipment and everything behind. That was it. Larry had provided me with an apartment where somebody supposedly committed suicide, but I would bet more strongly it was murder from what I'd heard later on. That was another one of those Wadman cover-ups. I went to an abandoned farmhouse. Well, this was in probably around June of '88.
Okay.
they raided the credit union. Larry had a lot of power, and from what I was told, when he got out on parole, he was paroled to Washington, D.C., and went to work for the National Republican Party.
That's what I've heard, too.
So this Franklin deal blew up big in the news and that. I was an innocent bystander that saw too much.
Right.
I feared for my life, so I just kept out of sight. And I made the mistake of telling somebody who I thought was a friend where I was at. And he happened to have been an informant. Next thing I know, here comes the FBI. Mom and Dad got their house raided, not once, but twice.
Right. What were they looking for?
Basically, I think it was more of a harassment. I was living a couple miles away, and Mom told them where I was at. She thought it was, the FBI, has got to be good people, this and that and the next thing, and she had no idea what all was going on. Here comes the FBI in. They raided my house. They didn't even look. They just tore the stuff up.
What I'm concerned about is whether or not you had any inkling or suspicions that there were higher level law enforcement officials who were, somewhat involved in this. They're covering it up.
Oh, I knew that from day one. They would be doing damage control on this something fierce. Most of what I had, most people did not know that I had. But just the fact that I had been there left a loose end. I thought I was lucky to get out of there with my life.
What happens after that? I mean, after they raid the house, what happens to you?
I basically went to living in my van. I traveled all over the country. I didn't stay hardly anywhere more than about 3 weeks.
Rusty, have you ever been threatened with your life about talking about this or anything like that?
Numerous times. People who would basically come out of the blue and just start talking. They wouldn't introduce themselves, and then it was basically keep your mouth shut. People will die.
Why do you think that there's never been an investigation on this particular aspect of the Franklin business? None of this has ever been brought to light as far as any kind of grand jury or trial. Why do you think that is?
Too much juice. That's been the biggest problem. A lot of these people are above the law. That may be changing soon.
Okay, let's bring it up to this Jeff Gannon thing. As most people know, Jeff Gannon was in the White House Presidential Press Corps. He was there on day passes, mere feet from the president, George W. Bush. Softballs a question. Other media constituents around him decide, well, let's find out who this guy is. They dig into his past. They find out that he was running a gay military escort service in the D.C. area. Now we've got people that are talking about the idea that Johnny Gosch may be Jeff Gannon. Do you think he is Johnny Gosch?
I'd put my money on it.
You would?
I met with Johnny out in Portland. This has been a couple years back. And there was something that was mentioned that wouldn't it be funny if somebody could get into the White House or, press corps or whatever.
What would be his motive for doing this?
Somewhat retaliation.
So kind of a payback.
They put him through hell. That's plain and simple. They ruined this kid's life.
Yeah.
I know what he'd said about being found out. He didn't want to be known as, what everybody thought he was. He'd been forced into a life that was not what he'd normally have been in. They didn't want to be remembered like that. This was a way that he could get in and make it somewhat better. They swept it under the rug pretty quick. They're trying to get this quieted down. There's good reason for it.
This Gannon thing blows open the latter part of January. Sometime shortly after that, Hunter Thompson supposedly commits suicide. And, of course, Noreen mentions a guy named Paul Bishop that was arrested in the D.C. area for manufacturing child pornography. And then Gannon comes back after he disappears for a while. And the first article that he posts on his website is Fear and Loathing in the Media. What's your take on Hunter Thompson's suicide?
I don't think it was suicide.
Why do you think he would have been murdered? Does it have something to do with this?
I believe it does.
In what way?
It would be the snuff films. There's a very good chance that he's holding it over somebody. And somebody just decided that it's easier to get rid of him than to give in. I was on a private jet that landed outside of Las Vegas.
Nothing out there but military installations.
Yeah, it's called Area 51. Well, we landed out there. there was a group of people came. There were a couple Arabic, and they just shuttled the kids off the plane.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't quite coherent. I'm sure they'd been drugged.
Yeah.
And they basically went out and brokered these kids.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever, in your experience, been to the Bohemian Grove?
Yes.
What goes on there?
Well, everybody thinks your laws and that are made in Washington, D.C. Sorry to inform you, but most of them are done in Bohemian Grove.
Would it be fair to say that a lot of the clientele have connections to Bohemian Grove?
Yes, that would be very true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a very elite group of people. It's a very private place. They have their own security, and they are very good about keeping it secure.
Mm-hmm.
This is a place where some of the satanic things go on.
And parts of this have never been made public. And Rusty, I want to thank you again for coming on the program and telling your story.
Well, thank you.
It's quite an incredible story. And of course, it does corroborate a lot of what people are hearing about, some of this stuff. A lot of people think that when Larry King was arrested and put in jail, this whole thing was over, but I don't think so.
No. Larry was just a broker. They have ways of doing things that are just incredible. People would never, ever even imagine the way they can do away with people.
Yeah.
And make it look totally accidental.
Yeah.
And this comes from your military buildup. A lot of these things that they're doing
mm-hmm.
are basically straight out of Hitler. You know, when they went into Germany
mm-hmm.
and they confiscate the records where they were doing these experiments when Hitler had it, they're doing the exact same thing now.
Right out of the book, almost.
They're just following in their footsteps.
Yeah. Noreen, when she came on the program, she inferred that there was a place in Colorado here where I am that they had safe houses where they took these kids to. Have you ever heard anything about Colorado? And can you tell me where in Colorado some of these places might be?
I can't tell you exactly where. I do still have notes and pictures that are still available.
Mm-hmm.
They are in a very safe place.
Yeah.
Or actually places. There are 3 of us who know about it. One of them I trust completely. The other one I'm starting to wonder about. But I do not feel safe in getting them.
Is this international, or is this just something that's locally restricted to Nebraska or the United States?
It's definitely not Nebraska. And it goes well beyond just the United States. It was basically white slave trade, where the people would come over and bid on people.
Mm-hmm.
There were some of them that I had heard went to Saudi Arabia and some of the Arabic countries over there. I've tried to keep away from politics and that since this happened, but the less I know, the better.
Right.
I knew of a couple dozen.
Couple dozen.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, it would be fair to say, too, that these are people that are maybe in key positions of the government.
Oh, yes. Very key positions.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking congressmen, senators, and above.
Yeah.
People who have money and wealth and power look at things in a different light than the normal person does.
Mm-hmm.
They're never quite satisfied with anything. It's always got to be bigger, better, faster, different, especially different.
Do you have any kind of feel for the involvement of this criminal enterprise with drugs, guns, any kind of terrorism?
Well, it helped fund Iran-Contras. Personally, I strongly believe that the American government did 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
There's various facts in that are available now that show that this was directly linked to the Bushes.
Mm-hmm.
It was a way for them to get a building taken down. It was a way for him to create a war. Most people are spoon-fed by the media,
mm-hmm.
so much so, and I'm sure you're well aware of this, that they have such a political slant on everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like these reporters that are embedded with the troops. Everything they do and say is censored before it is let out.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't swing the way that they want it to swing, it gets killed.
Did you know Troy Boner?
Yes, I did.
What happened to him? I understand he died.
He died.
You know why?
It was under very, very strange causes.
Mm-hmm.
He went to a mental hospital saying that there was people after him,
mm-hmm.
and he was discredited. He ended up dying shortly after that.
I heard it was a drug overdose at a rehab center.
Yeah.
Do you think he was murdered?
I very strongly really believe so.
Because he seemed like, that conspiracy of silence video kind of circulates around the internet, and I've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he was one of the major contributors to information in that video, and he sounded to me like he was really plugged into what was going on.
Did you know that video was to have aired on Discovery Channel?
Right.
They had it in TV Guide and everything.
Right.
20 minutes before it was to air, the Bush family bought it off and killed it.
Really?
Yes. They've done everything you can think of to me. They've thrown me in prison. They've put me in solitary, the whole bit.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody who's associated with this seems to be dropping dead one way or another.
So how many people you got a body count? How many people have died from this?
I think there's around a dozen.
Really?
Say that I have known, and a lot of these aren't publicized.
Mm-hmm.
One kid just happened to have got out in front of a cement truck.
Really?
That just don't really happen.
No.
And the thing is, with this mind control bit, people don't understand it. They can just hear a tone or a certain word or phrase, and they will go turn into basically a totally different person.
Mm-hmm.
They can get them to do things that a normal person would never even consider.
Yeah.
People don't realize how easily they can manipulate.
Mm-hmm.
They can get somebody to where they will drive a car up and have a bomb in it, or fly the plane into the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
I wake up every morning or go to bed every night wondering if the FBI or somebody's going to come kick my door in.
Yeah.
No matter where I go, they know right where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, Rusty, I want to thank you for coming on the air, telling your story.
Well, thank you.
And let's definitely stay in touch, okay?
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
All right, you take care.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We're in Nebraska talking with Rusty Nelson, and people would be very happy to know he is alive and well.
Why?
Because there's a lot of people worried about you. Could you just give us some background on how it came about that you ended up on the registry?
Well, I was arrested for taking pictures of a minor, and they couldn't produce the minor. They couldn't produce the pictures, anything like that. I had been associated with the Franklin Credit Union, and they basically followed me all over the country. I lived in my van for years. I didn't stay hardly anywhere more than 3 weeks. And then I would move somewhere else. And I just wanted to distance myself from Franklin. It wasn't my actions that in Franklin. It was just that I was an innocent bystander that was drug into the picture.
Now, if people want to know more on the background of that, they can read Senator John DeCamp's book, The Franklin Cover-Up.
Yeah. They can read that.
And you were only involved in that for a brief time, actually.
Yeah, about a year.
Yeah. But as a consequence,
87, 88.
You became a target for...
a lot. It was a witch hunt, is what they made it into. And anybody I worked with, I made sure that they had proper ID and that they were over 18 or of legal age in the state wherever I was in. And, I have no problem shooting nudes or anything like that. I look at it as the human form is a piece of art. And everybody's special in their own unique way.
And there are a lot of females who want some...
they want
the attention of the modeling portfolio, and even if they are underage, they might bend the rules without...
Well, like in my case, they said the girl gave me a fake ID. And, I said, well, who's the girl? Show me the girl and show me what the deal is on this. And they couldn't.
So you can respond. How do you respond to charges like that?
Their charges, the other thing was, I said, no, will I get the chance to face my accuser in court? And they said, no, because she's a minor, she doesn't have to testify, and she does not have to.
But couldn't they at least give you, because you said you had signed forms.
Yes.
And they admitted you had a signed form, consent form.
Yes.
And couldn't they at least give you some tangible proof that there was some justifiable reason to charge you with anything?
And that's the thing. I was very tenacious about getting releases, and on the release it says under penalty of perjury, they affirm that they are of 18 or they're full legal age. And, um, I was just totally at a loss. And
Even if you took nude photos of underage girls, did you ever engage with sex within it?
No.
So you're just thrown in jail
Mhm.
under these extreme circumstances, and no means to financial means.
They wiped me out. I had over 250,000 pictures with me when I was arrested, and I was moving back home, and they confiscated my van, my camper, and all the pictures. I didn't get a single picture back.
And those were pictures mostly of
scenery. These were National Geographic quality pictures. I'm very, very meticulous with my photography work when it comes to the scenics, especially. And a lot of these were historic pictures. I had pictures of this, that, and the next thing, cattle drive, all these different types of things, and they're just gone.
And what justification did they give for keeping the pictures that were not related to the charges?
They kept saying, well, they were misplaced and this and that and the next thing. Basically what happened is they were destroyed because there were pictures of Franklin in there. And John DeCamp even seen some of them. He was the only person on my side who actually got in to see the pictures before they were destroyed.
So do you think that all in all that this whole targeting of you is basically to discredit you because of your relationship with the Franklin scam?
Yes.
And nothing whatsoever to do with actual sexual offenses?
No, you get these prosecuting attorneys that will go to great lengths because they have endless means. They can, we can justify it because of this or that, or we're protecting the public.
And to defend yourself, you have very limited means.
Yeah, they give you a public pretender, or what's supposedly known as a public defender. These are people who are often overworked. In the case in Oregon, they got a set amount for doing the case. So it was basically just enough to where they would go in long enough to get a plea bargain out of somebody and do the paperwork, and that's all they were getting paid for. So they didn't want to go in and get a case that is going to be involved, that they're going to have to put a lot of time and effort and money into. And if I remember right, I can't believe it was $756 is what the lawyer got for doing the case, which is nothing. And I was told the conviction rate on plea bargain in Multnomah County in Oregon was 98.6% that were found guilty by plea bargain.
So it's pretty much an assembly line.
Yeah. And on mine, I took it as a no contest because I was told that I'd be able to open it up again and fight it once I had the means to do so. And they wouldn't do it. It was just open and shut. And anything you try to do to help yourself, they won't allow you to do. They say they have a law library. That's a joke. Law library in the jails is always outdated, usually by 10 years or more. And these laws have changed. You may spend your time going through the law books, looking up things. They do not have a photocopier or anything else. You might get a typewriter. If it works is another story, or if they have a ribbon for it. You're lucky if you know how to run a typewriter. Most don't.
Now, the state of mind they while you're in jail is manipulated, and
Exactly.
so you're not at your optimum to be able to fight it.
Yeah, they had me to where they came around and woke me up every 15 minutes to a half hour, and they would do this continuously for days on end, and actually weeks on end, and you just are not yourself, and different forms of mental illness set in. They send you down to the doctor. Doctor prescribes you medication. You start taking this medication, and in hopes of getting better, and all you end up doing is becoming an addict to it. You've got to have it, because getting off of it or going without it induces seizures, induces withdrawals, all these things.
So these are some of the medications you take on a daily basis.
That's a day's worth.
And that's how much of it's one day's worth?
That's a day's worth.
That one row.
Yeah.
And so this is morning, noon, and night, or?
And then there's another set that goes with it, four times a day.
What do you mean another set that goes with it?
Well, there's a few other pills that I take, and I only got 3 slots.
Well, can you kind of explain what they are? What's that pretty blue and green one?
Oh, that's Cymbalta. That's the new miracle wonder drug for anti-depression. And myself, I don't think it really does much, but they like to prescribe it. Let's see.
Oh, you got a gel cap there.
Don't remember what that one is.
Is that a vitamin?
Off. This one here is little red guy.
Yeah.
Lyrica. That's for seizures and that. And that's the other thing that Cymbalta is supposed to help with. And then Geodon. That's because all the trauma I'd went through in jail and that. They say it's for anti-schizophrenia. There's some of this stuff I've had. It's well over $20 a pill, and have to take it 4 times a day.
And I'm hoping somebody's helping foot the bill.
Yeah. And
which ones are those?
I don't have it in here right now.
What kind of medications were you on before you were incarcerated?
Nothing.
And how many medications are you on, or how many did you become placed on under incarceration?
54.
Different medications?
Prescriptions.
Simultaneously?
Yeah. It's a lot of pills.
And were they forcibly?
Some were. They wanted to give me a shot when they had me in prison. And I wouldn't let them do it because I was advised by the lawyer not to. Well, they came and forcibly gave it to me anyway, and then they threw me in a cell on the west side of the prison with a large window, and it was in August or September. And it was just hot as all get out. There was no ventilation in there.
Well, now, how did they force you to take this injection?
They took 4 guys and held me down.
And were you threatened if you didn't?
With shotguns, 2 shotguns.
Aimed at you
yes,
at the time?
In my head.
And what did they say?
He said, you are going to take it, and you're going to get it. And that's all there is to it.
And if you don't?
And if you don't, if you resist, we will shoot you.
They meant it.
Oh, they meant it.
And what do you think was in that injection?
I don't remember what the shot was even for anymore. But
You said it was supposed to be like a tuberculosis.
yeah, tuberculosis is what it was.
But it was a real.
Yeah, it was a larger needle than, it was like a 16 gauge needle, which was a very large needle for something like that. That's more the size they get plasma from. And, the tuberculosis shot is a very fine needle. So either they were wanting to inflict pain, or I don't know what was in the syringe.
Do you think it's possible there could have been some device?
No, there could have been a chip planted in me. I'm pretty sure that they did
Like
at one time.
A tracking device?
Yes, because there's been places where we didn't tell anybody where we were going, and we've met up with people.
Did you have cell phones on
No.
you, or
No.
paging device or GPS devices
No
on you?
electronic gear at all. So,
Were you by surveillance cameras, or?
no, unless it was aerial. Yeah, that would have been the only thing that it could have been. So,
Well, and that's continued to this day. That's been how long?
well, I was arrested Friday the 13th of September in 1996, and this has been going ever since then.
That's 12, almost 13 years.
Yes, this has actually been going on since '88, when Franklin blew up and became an international story and hit international headlines.
Oh, well, don't you wish you could reduce the number of them? And
Oh, I've been trying to whittle it down. It's nothing near what I've had to take there for a while. It's just.
But you report regularly to someone who changes your prescriptions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, there's two different things they have. They've got a community service worker. It's basically like a parole officer that comes up and sees me once a week, and then.
Well, it would feel like a parole officer.
Oh yeah. Well, he's an ex-cop. He's a retired cop.
Well, does he have medical expertise?
Not really.
So you're kind of in a chemical straitjacket here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what they try to do with everybody who's in jail, that they can get onto whatever drugs that they become addicted to. And when they bring you from one jail to another or whatever, or when you're first arrested, you won't get your meds for 3 days.
No matter how badly you need it.
Yeah, life-threatening ones, and that you might, if you really, really, really get sick. But otherwise, they hold out, and what they'll do is they keep hitting you up trying to get a plea bargain or a confession out of you while you're going through withdrawals.
Yeah, which is not supposed to be under duress or coercion.
I hate to tell you, but everything in jail is under duress. Everything. And if you make note of it, they don't like that. And, it's not a good deal. I got another one for you. Out of Multnomah County Jail in Oregon, they would regularly send in what they called the bumblebees, the SWAT team, and they'd throw in a flashbang grenade 3-4 o'clock in the morning and just come in, and then they just tear our cells apart and throw us out, strip search us and all that, right out in the middle of everything. And
Now, because I'm not familiar with what a flashbang is.
a flashbang grenade it's a grenade that they throw in, and it has a very loud percussion and a very bright light. So it blinds you when you first see it, and when you hear it, you're just the sound and the percussion from it. It just feels like somebody's just beating on your chest, and the sound will actually knock you over.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you're asleep and you hear that,
oh yeah,
you could make you have a heart attack from the shock of it.
Easily. And they done this regularly. You know, it was nothing unusual, once or twice a month. And the TV crew would be out there to film it for
Is
the
this
evening
entertainment?
news.
Well, what kind of story? We're harassing our prisoners today?
No, their SWAT teams are in training, and they would show close up, going in and this and that and dragging the prisoners out, and you had no privacy or anything like that. Um, it was ridiculous. So, and when you're first arrested, you're convicted by the media before you get even a chance to see the judge. They've slandered you so bad that there's no way that you can get a semblance of real life. And when you get out, they want you to go back to the same community that you came from, and there's no way you can really get a good start.
No, what do you mean? They want you to go back to the same community.
Well, they want you to go
They
back.
want you to. They don't want you to get a fresh start somewhere where.
No, they don't want you to really change environments. They want you to. They do everything they can to get you to reoffend. They make it a point to make you either offend on something else or reoffend on the same type of scenario. It's ridiculous.
So, do you think there's good officers there that want to protect the public from bad guys and have their hearts in the right place, or do you think it just gets lost in the?
Well, they're there, but they're following orders, and they, most of the guys are military, and they know what the chain of command is and the orders, and they don't break it.
And they don't ask questions.
No, they don't ask questions, and they don't put up a fuss, or they'll be looking for a new job. And they would transfer me around often, and when they did, they would inevitably lose my meds, and they would say, well, your med list doesn't transfer from this jail to our jail. You have to wait, and then they have to contact whoever it was that I got the original prescription from. If I couldn't remember who it was, I didn't get the medication, and I went through the withdrawals. If the people on the other end didn't fax them back the information to get the prescription for me, I had to go without it. And
could it be potentially life-threatening?
oh, it was. There were numerous times I went into bad seizures because of it.
In jail, and then what kind of treatment or care did you get as a result?
Oh, they lay you on a cement bunk with a really thin mattress. They call it a mattress. It's basically ground up rags in a plastic sheath, and it's about 2 inches thick, and it's hard as a rock. Oftentimes, if they want to, if they have somebody they're really trying to get to or make their life miserable to the point to where, say, they're fighting their charges, they offered me a 13-month sentence. That'd be 12 months and 1 day for my charges. And I stayed in jail for 22 and a half months fighting it. And I finally got to the point where I couldn't fight it no more physically.
And did that time apply to the sentence?
Yeah, most of it did. They put me for observation down in the Oregon State Hospital. It happens to be the same place where they filmed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's where I got to take a shower, folks.
Oh, great. Any nurses there named Ratchet?
No, but there are things pertaining to Miss Ratchet that
are real
from her days. You know, it has her signatures on it. And
there was a real nurse named
yes.
Ratchet?
Yeah.
At that facility?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my. I thought that was fiction. I'm sorry. Yeah. And then once you're in the registry, you've had to, what's been the consequences of that? You've had to register your whereabouts within 5 days.
Yeah.
Wherever you go.
Had to register wherever I go. I have to, the DNA sample. It was just one thing after another. And
then there have even been attempts on your life.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I've been shot at 3 different times. I've had death threats. I've had various threats against me. And that as recent as a week ago.
And now they can also, you've also had the experience of people actively pursuing, ousting you from your neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
When you try to get yourself situated, and they do it by means of, well, tell me what's happened.
Well, after I moved into another house, I'd done some work on it, and the lady couldn't pay me, but she had an apartment downstairs, and it had a garage. And
well, she certainly wasn't worried about you being some dangerous offender.
She knew about it, and she had 2 daughters, one 3 and one 8, and
because she knew you well enough.
She'd leave me home to babysit. You know, there was no problems there at all, and I'd lived there about a month or so and registered and everything else. And then lo and behold, here comes Norfolk Police Department at their finest and knocking on my door. And I wasn't home. Well, they went upstairs and brought with a mugshot, like a wanted list. On the top of it, it had sex offender on the top, just printed out in big bold letters. And they brought it up to the person upstairs, to the lady that owned the house upstairs, and goes to her kids, "Do you know who this man is?"
To her kids?
To her kids.
That were age?
8 and 3. And anyway, the kids opened the door and
so they're terrifying the kids.
They're terrifying everybody. And
they are terrorists.
Yeah. And anyway, they said to the lady, and he's this, he's that, and the next thing. And it's nowhere even close to what happened. And it's just the fact they read something on a rap sheet, and on plea bargains, the deal was the one charge I would take and everything else would be dropped and expunged. And as soon as I took it, it was just like I got convicted of everything.
They never expunged the other false charges?
No.
And what about the daycare?
The daycare center across the way. Well, you have to be 500 feet away from school, so or a daycare. So I went and measured out. I was 528 and a half feet away from the school. No problem. I, asked them at the sheriff's office, "Is there any problem with me living here?" No. Well, that was when I registered. And then lo and behold, here comes Norfolk's finest. Or so they think they are. And they come in and, you're living too close to a daycare. And I go, well, I looked for signs. I didn't see no sign. Oh, they've got a fenced-in backyard.
So you should have assumed, because someone had a fenced yard, it was your responsibility to assume that they had a daycare center with
Yeah.
no sign.
And he goes, well, there's cars going in and out of there all the time. You should have noted. Could have been a drug dealer. I don't know. They got cars going in and out of them places all the time too. So,
Well, and aren't some of these people so aggressive that they will actually find that a sex offender, is located in the neighborhood, and they will surreptitiously start a daycare center
yes,
they'll find someone within the yardage
yes,
requirement and ask them to start a daycare center without a sign.
yes.
So they could come in and evict you.
They will put up the money. They will put up the resources to start a daycare center within the area. And what they've done is they've went across the city and basically mapped out the 500 feet limits. So they basically put them 1,000 feet apart from each other.
And covered the whole city.
They cover the whole city. I moved in the only place that I was able to. And
that's like across the street from the police station and the fire station. How do you feel about maybe there are people, maybe the majority of people, or it's justifiable for somehow that they shouldn't be around people's kids, or they, I can understand the concern of parents if there is somebody who's been convicted of something involving young children of a sex. If there is somebody who's been convicted of something involving young children of a sexual nature, but so we sympathize with people who want to do good to protect their kids, but sometimes it's just, I think they need to leave the prosecution of the law up to the people, the professionals.
Leave it to the judge.
Yes, and not to some vigilante citizens who really don't know the whole story.
Yeah, vigilante citizens and vigilante officers. That's, they had in the jail where I was at in Multnomah County, they had 4 people killed around the time I was there.
What's the name of that county?
Multnomah.
Can you spell that?
Multnomah.
In Oregon.
Yes, it's Portland, Oregon. And they were killed by the guards in Oregon. Multnomah.
Can you spell that?
Multnomah.
In Oregon.
Yes, it's Portland, Oregon. And they were killed by the guards. They had a fellowship called the Brotherhood of the Strong. And the guards were officially relinquished of any wrongdoing, but they were reprimanded and by being discharged is what one of them was discharged, and I think the other 3 or 4 were reprimanded.
So they got away with murder.
Yes. And
does it ever expire, this?
Well, yes and no, but usually what they do is, see, in Nebraska, it will expire on certain levels. It'll expire in 10 years after your last incarceration or police contact. And
police contact? Well, they can contact you for any reason or non-reason.
And so anyway, what they do is they bring you in on bogus charges right before the 10 years expires, and then you have to start all over again. And
they know the law well enough to just play it and manipulate it to their advantage.
Exactly. And it's really a shame. In school, they need to be teaching these kids about law. Not everyone's going to end up in jail, but everyone can end up in jail. And the way they've got the system set up and the laws set up, they can, if Mother Teresa was still alive, they could arrest her, I'm sure. My background's electronics engineering, but when I go into um, a company and say, oh, tell them, I went to school at MIT and, DeVry, uh, all hunky dory, but when they see that you're a convicted felon, a lot of times they don't want anything to do with you, especially when it's a sex related felon.
Yeah.
So,
well, I can understand people's concern, but I just want people to know that, there are exceptions. I mean, not everyone who's convicted is rightfully so.
oh, exactly. There was a lot of people that I seen when I was in jail and in prison that do not need to be there, should not be there. There were so many people that were in jail for things that they should have just been written a citation and to show up in court or send in money for a fine. And that's, they say stress overcrowding in the jails. It's not that way.
But it's a private for-profit industry now.
Yes, a lot of it is. They don't let you study. I wanted books to read, to better myself, and about the only thing we could get would be science fiction and Zane Grey novels.
Not very much meat in those
No.
books to work with.
And that's, Louis L'Amour stories and that, they're nice and all that if you like old westerns. You might get a magazine, but it may be 10 years old. You
can't further your education.
No, you can't, and they won't let you. They won't let you take a correspondence course. They won't let you get textbooks.
They won't let you take a correspondence course?
Oh.
That surprises me.
Yeah. They won't let you do anything in jail. And, if you want to go to the law library, they give you, if you're lucky, a half hour once a week. And you're supposed to be able to write down word for word exactly what it says in that book.
Because you can't photocopy it because there's no photocopier that works. And even a practiced lawyer couldn't target what they need in a half hour.
I know lawyers that were in jail that couldn't do it. And they give you one piece of paper and a pencil. If you break the pencil lead, you're screwed. And if you write enough to fill that piece of paper and still have time left, you just sit there and wait for them to come get you.
Can you update us on what's happened since the last major interview you did? Well, there was a connection at that time with Hunter Thompson because
yes.
That was in February of 2005 that he supposedly shot himself while talking on the phone.
He was shot.
He was shot?
That wasn't a shot himself deal.
Well, but people say he was talking to his wife, so how would
I don't know what deals was, but knowing what I knew about Hunter and what was going on, somebody offed him.
Was he trying to come forward with
I don't know. I think he was. I didn't have much contact with him. What I had, I wasn't too impressed with the man. So.
Well, his assistant Nicole Brown even wrote articles about of living with him and how he tried to get her to sit down and watch snuff movies with him.
Mm-hmm.
She refused.
Yeah.
Like that was entertainment or something.
Yeah, he was a bizarre person.
He's got a lot of fans for some reason.
Yeah, I know there's been people coming out of the woodwork trying to debunk me left and right because of what I've known about Hunter Thompson firsthand. And
well, they haven't succeeded, have they?
Maybe in their mind. Yeah.
Because he offered you money to
a great deal of money.
What, $100,000 or something?
Yeah.
Not just once.
Yeah. And it was a couple different times. It was usually through Larry King.
So Larry'd be the one putting up the money,
No, Larry was be the one facilitating it.
arranging it.
Yeah, arranging it. And I don't know where the money was coming from, but it was just not a good deal. I refused. I didn't want any part of it, and because of the people that Larry King was associated with and seemed to be the puppeteer for, I didn't know who to turn to even turn something like this in, because it could be right my own death sentence.
Well, hasn't improved much, has it?
No, my life isn't much better than that. It's probably death sentence would have been easier.
Well, no, we don't want to wish that for you, because we're glad you're still around. What were the specifics on the trip that you made where you went to Vegas and you picked up Hunter Thompson and went to Bohemian Grove with him?
I didn't go with Hunter Thompson. That wasn't Hunter Thompson I went with. You just asked if I've been to Bohemian Grove.
Okay, but but Hunter Thompson was.
That was around that time that
Okay.
you said Hunter Thompson was.
Well, I know.
Those were the questions that came up.
You swung by and picked somebody up at Area 51.
Area 51 was a where we landed one time with the jet.
Okay.
And they auctioned some kids off.
Yeah.
As what I could make the best of it. The kids looked like they'd been drugged up, and the kids didn't go on the plane with us. They went the other way with the others.
With whoever purchased them?
Yeah, basically.
And then went to Saudi Arabia and other places like that.
Yeah.
But there was some occasion where I thought the story was that you flew into Las Vegas and picked up Hunter Thompson and went to Bohemian Grove with him.
No, somebody misinformed you on that one.
What am I scrambling up? Sort out the facts for me.
Hunter Thompson wasn't in on that. I met him in New York City.
Okay. Really? You never crossed paths with him at Bohemian Grove?
I don't think so. I may have before I met him.
Oh, I didn't know who he was.
Didn't know who he was, but you meet so many people, it's hard to remember everybody, especially 20 years ago. But that one you must be mistaken on, because that wasn't Hunter Thompson I flew into Vegas for.
Who was it?
What's that?
Who was it?
That was the kids that got auctioned off. That's where Vegas came from.
That was the only Vegas.
Yeah. Other than that, I lived in Vegas for a while. And I went down there with Ted Gunderson. I lived with Ted for a while, which was interesting.
But you ended up very shortly after giving the Michael Corbin interview. How long after that were you arrested? See, that was in April.
Probably July. I think June, July.
I thought it was just a few days after, but maybe not.
Yeah, I've been in and out so many times on that failure register. I couldn't even keep track of when the dates were.
Well, I thought that was just used in particular that time to.
Yeah. Well, every time I give an interview and it's made public, I usually end up in jail.
Well, I hope that doesn't happen. And when you ended up in jail, I know that Ted Gunderson had said you were interviewed regularly by men in suits.
Yes.
Who would come to your jail cell.
Yeah, men in black.
Elaborate on that.
They would come in, everybody from the FBI on down.
So you knew, you could see identification who they were?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, they just said who they were, and it was left at that, and they wouldn't produce ID even if I asked for it. And I had no way to retain it because my short-term memory is basically fried because of the medications I'm on.
That they put you on while you were in jail.
And it's just not.
So what do you think happened? I mean, what was the purpose of their visits?
Basically to debrief me, to find out what I knew and who it actually implicated. And that's what it was, Franklin went all the way to the White House.
And that implicates?
It implicates a lot of people. And,
but it even goes beyond that, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it goes on, the people who control the puppet strings. And, it's scary. To say the least, it's very scary.
That these people have that much power and that they are not using it for the betterment of us.
No, they're doing it for their own good, to either cover their butts or to push along their own agenda.
Well, do you think that things that were involved in the Franklin scandal were to compromise people and so that they would have political advantage over them?
Yeah, there was blackmail and all that done. They basically had a honeypot scheme set up, where they would get political people or people in power or that have money or whatever to engage with sex with men or underage kids or whatever. And then either they would be videotaping it secretly or somehow recording it.
Did you ever do any video
taping?
Just photographs?
I do mainly photographs, and on that stuff, I didn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
You didn't get involved in the actual blackmailing of
But, I knew that it was going on. There again, who do you go to tell? You don't know who your friends are, and you don't know.
But somebody must have thought that your pictures were would put some people in jeopardy, their careers, or.
Oh yeah.
Did they blow that out of proportion, or was there some?
There's meat to it.
Yeah, there's some cause for them.
It's a T-bone steak.
Yeah. Okay. So, what do you think that they, besides this sleep deprivation, the medication, all these control mechanisms they used on you, we think it went beyond that, your programming?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they'd use subliminal programming where they would use recordings in your sleep. Or when they
in jail, they did?
Oh yes. Oh yes. They came in and they would come in and they would play an endless loop tape in jail. Basically, you're guilty, you're take the plea bargain because it's the best way out and things like that. And then showing cop shows over and over and over again about how the perpetrator has been arrested, and that was their form of entertainment, is what they made it to be. But they had a 2-hour endless loop tape that played over and over and over again.
Well, not to mention that would just interrupt your subconscious recovery during your dream state. That would be boring to have the same thing over and over.
They played it 24 hours a day. So you might be trying to take a nap in the daytime, you'd still be listening to it.
Could you use earplugs?
They wouldn't give them to you.
Could you
They wouldn't let you
form
use.
your own?
They were contraband. If they found,
Earplugs were contraband.
yeah. Yeah. Yes, folks, if you haven't been there, please go try it. Enjoy it. You'll love to stay. And I was having seizures and
Were they the big grand mal kind, or the
no,
little?
they were the petted malls.
Petted malls,
Yeah,
or
the
the
absence.
absinthe? Why don't you describe that for people who don't know what that is?
An pettit seizure is where just a particular part of your body, like your midsection or an arm or neck or leg or whatever, keeps having spasms that you cannot control. An absent seizure is where you become basically absent and you don't know.
You're just mentally gone.
Yeah, mentally gone. You might be able to pick up on a couple different things, but you cannot grasp what's going on at that time.
Well, that could be. Now, that just started after you had the injury from.
I was in Portland. I had gotten out of jail and I was riding my bicycle and I was intentionally hit. There was a car going by about 50 miles an hour. They honked their horn. I turned around and looked at them. They opened their back door and hit me on my bicycle.
Do you have any recollection of who it was, or?
All it was a white Toyota was the last thing I remember. And I was out for approximately 45 minutes.
And you hit your head on the railroad track.
Yes.
Going at.
Yeah.
Well, they were going at 50. And
Yeah.
so how were you rescued?
I wasn't. I picked myself up.
You lay there for 45 minutes unattended?
On the railroad tracks.
Oh my gosh. You could have had a train run over you.
Wouldn't be that lucky.
Or a car.
Yeah.
But nobody came by and.
Car wouldn't have got me. I was off on the side in the ditch.
And nobody noticed you driving by and stopped.
No, it was somewhat deserted. It was an industrial street, and it was a major thoroughfare, but it was.
But how did you get yourself home from there?
I picked myself up. I went in all bloody, and one of the places where I washed windows, I went in and I said, I need to clean up. And they didn't even recognize me. And I'd washed their windows there just a day or two before.
Because of the
blood and the
swelling
and everything else. And I didn't have insurance, so I didn't want to go to the hospital. And so I laid up in my storage shed for a few days. So.
And that's all the treatment you got for that.
Yeah.
I wonder if that could have prevented the seizures if you'd had better treatment
maybe,
at the time. But so now, as a result of that, you are not allowed to drive?
Yes. Cannot drive because of my seizures.
And how often does this happen to you?
Well, sometimes 10, 15 times a day.
That you'll have the absence?
Yeah. And they're not really noticeable by people. I'll notice I'll be having light seizures, and then, about every couple weeks or so, I'll get the heavier seizures. I've only had 3 grand malls.
Only? Those are big time.
Oh yeah, you flop around like fish out of water.
Now you're also taking medication for depression.
Oh yeah.
Which, now do you think that's mostly organic depression, or do you think it's from emotional circumstances?
Oh, stress.
Stress?
Stress is a major cause of it.
Oh, now didn't you say you had some symptoms that started when you were in the service?
Yes.
And that was before Franklin?
Yes, I was in 85 and 86, and Franklin was 87, 88.
Yeah.
So.
And so you think that there was something given to you, or in the Army?
It was a drug called T-Gan.
Called what?
Yeah, it was an experimental drug called T-Gan.
T-Gan?
Yeah. T-G-A-N is all I ever knew it by.
And what was it?
I don't know what it was used for.
You don't know what it was supposed to do?
No.
But you know that it gave you depression?
You know,
Did it have a similar effect?
Yeah.
And what were the circumstances of that?
Became suicidal.
Oh,
From it, and it was just.
They give you a medical discharge?
No.
They give you an honorable discharge?
No. They gave me what's called a TDP. It's a training discharge.
What in the world is that?
Yeah, that's what I said. It's a strange critter. It's like I never even existed in the military. Can't get benefits, can't get anything.
They're just disavowing any responsibility for you.
Yeah, exactly.
After what they did to you.
Yeah.
That's just strange. So then the depression got a lot worse during Franklin, or?
Well, after I was in Franklin, it got pretty bad there for a while after I realized what I was in. When I first started out, I was a real happy camper.
Because it seemed like the whole world had just opened up to you.
Yeah.
Expensive clothes and fancy jets, private jets.
Yeah, here I was finally getting the contacts I needed to be a photographer, and I'd been paying my dues and finally made it big time. Here I was on a private jet flying all over and
taking photographs at the fundraisers mostly, right?
Yeah, that's what I was doing, and it was just amazing. Here's a little plowboy, and all of a sudden he's in the big time.
And you adapted pretty well. I mean, you.
Well, I try. No, I could do it again real easy, but
it's higher social circles.
Yeah,
But then it all came crashing down.
Yeah.
When you realized what you'd gotten into.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you realize there's something wasn't right and that you were in over your head?
Well, when I started seeing Larry doing various things that weren't quite kosher. Like there was one day that one of the first things was he gave a stack of money to, or well, it was an envelope of money to
police chief at Omaha.
Yeah, he basically was able to cover most anything up for Larry.
And that was that wasn't a one-time.
Yeah, that was a regular thing. And as far as I could tell, it was about once a week. And the stack of $100 bills, I measured it out later with money that I had on my own, and it came to about $50,000
per week.
Yeah.
What do you think he was covering up, or what did you know he was covering up?
Well, I didn't know at that time anything, but at that point, then I started seeing all these different things where he was sending kids to different, events that he had going on.
Who was?
Larry.
Larry
was. And then they'd have the parties for the people, and then afterwards they'd have sex parties for the special people. And the kids, I noticed, were staying for those parties. And then
And these were kids that were unsupervised by adults.
Oh yeah, well, the adults that were there shouldn't be supervising kids. That's basically it. Do not leave your kids with those type of people.
Yeah. But the kids were not protected by any guardians.
No, they were there as the sex toys.
How they
playthings.
How they acquire the kids?
Larry had a daycare center, and he took in orphan and.
Now you say he had a daycare center, but there was a different person who was the actual owner, right? Who tried to shut it down.
Yeah, no. Well, the actual owner didn't. It was the person who owned the building.
Oh,
is the way I understood.
So did Larry actually own the business of the daycare center?
He put up the money for it.
Okay.
I don't know if he was a silent partner or exactly how it actually was, but that was the purpose of it. He was trying to do all these philanthropic things for people and, be this wonderful philanthropist, but
that was mostly
that was a ploy. That was definitely a decoy.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you said he had a lot of techniques for manipulating other people, whether they
he
knew
was
it
good.
was coming from him or not.
He was good, you know. And if it was somebody near him that done something that he didn't like, you know, he didn't. Well, a lot of times he didn't approach it himself, and he would just see that the person was removed. A lot of times physically or that through a third party, and whether they be beaten or sexually abused or whatever.
Were they ever removed by termination?
They'd be terminated and things like termination in the different sense. Yeah,
I mean termination as in
the ultimate termination.
Yeah.
Yes. There was
by Larry's order.
There were people that were.
Wow, that would have to really create an insecure situation for you.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't know who.
There was one guy. He, from what I understand, was hit by a cement truck.
Was it a guy or a child or?
It was a guy. It was a guy, a younger guy, and it was supposedly suicide.
Suicide with the aid of a cement truck?
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
So, another one supposedly had his head blown off with a 12 gauge.
Was that
shotgun.
an accidental suicide or?
Yeah, supposedly that was an accidental suicide. So, so they said through Wadman's office.
Oh, so they get to write up their reports and
Yeah.
how things happened.
So, it makes life interesting.
Well, now everybody just cringes at how just awful the whole Franklin scandal was. Was it an isolated case, or was it the only savings and loan that
No,
or
from
credit
what I
union?
understand, Larry had done this 3 times before.
And you never hear about the other ones.
He built up and crashed the three credit unions, and that on the East Coast.
But that was his intent, right?
Basically.
I mean, everybody might see that other people might see that as a failure, but that was.
Yeah, well, this one, Warren Buffett's wife, from what I understand, put up the money. Susan, yeah. Put up the money for
the
Franklin Credit Union. So to help the underprivileged people of Omaha.
I mean, do you think she really had a good heart and was trying to?
Yes, Susan did. Susan, I do believe, was acting from, trying to better things.
This is something I just was reminded of the other photographer that you were made up to look like.
No.
And during the Benassi trial, you actually had to take your shirt off to prove that you
I didn't have
a scar
on my right shoulder. And
on your back.
Yeah, and I don't. All the kids said that he had a scar, and I don't have a scar there. I ran into the guy a couple times, and I think his name was Nick. I think it was Nick. That's what comes to mind right now, but it's been a long time.
And you never heard anything about what's happened to him since?
No. Well, this has been 20 years ago.
Yeah. But if he was brought up in the trial as a material witness, you think he'd be subpoenaed or?
Well, they didn't know who he was. That's it. How do you track him down?
So he he managed to escape. But he actually was more involved in
He was the one that was doing the kiddie porn and all that.
The hardcore.
Yeah. The snuff films and everything else.
Well, do you think he's even still alive?
Be the scapegoat. Probably not. And if he is, he's out of the country.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and they wanted to pass that off on you.
Yeah.
How many times did you go to Bohemian Grove?
once officially.
That was an interesting answer.
Yeah.
Did they even have an official guest list?
I don't know. That was basically the one time where I was out and open to see what was what.
Okay, and then unofficially, you stayed behind the scenes and you were there again once or a couple times more?
3 times.
3 times? So was that during the gathering of the
Yeah,
big
with the
wigs?
burning of the owl,
Moloch.
the effigy of the owl.
Yeah.
So,
And mock sacrifice, right?
yeah, from what we understood.
Well, the public.
Yeah, they burned a mock.
No. It was supposedly there are human children sacrificed there.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah, but if you were there at that time and you were behind the scenes, you probably witnessed.
Yeah, well, I seen things go on, and that was basically it.
Well, the stuff that Benassi writes about being in the
well,
snuff movie with the other little boy.
things like that went on. I seen something like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's got to be pretty horrendous for anybody who has to.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're prepared, you think you're prepared
after
for
the
it.
army, it didn't faze me.
Well, but you didn't
that
see
much.
combat in the army, did you?
No, but you saw enough otherwise in training and that you were
Training.
just numb.
And that's part of desensitizing process they
Yeah.
probably put you through.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, that's just.
And, who do you go tell? If you're going to say something like that, here's an upstanding citizen and in the community, and here's what he would call a street urchin. That's what he thought of the kids.
There's too many upstanding members of the community that aren't upstanding at all.
Yeah. So.
Especially, it seems like the higher they rise in the ranks of political power,
the more they get away with.
Well, the more that they're forced to become part of the corruption, or they don't rise.
Exactly. Yeah.
So to me, it's almost like, by definition, if you are. When you ran into Johnny Gossip in Portland, that was had to have been around 2003, 2002.
2, I believe.
2002. Did he go by Johnny at that time? Or
I don't know what he actually went by. I didn't ask.
You weren't introduced formally, and
I knew who he was.
Yeah.
And
Well, had you known him before then?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. Well, I hate to go over ground that you've covered a million times, and people should know by now if they've listened to your other interviews. But you also went with Larry King to Offutt Air Force Base.
Yes.
Multiple occasions?
Yes.
Like about how many times did you go there?
Half a dozen maybe. And Larry would go through the checkpoint and just drive right through.
Which is, I mean, even bird colonels probably have a tough time doing that.
Yeah.
So, and he could take anyone with him. No matter who they were.
It was just like he had diplomatic immunity.
Maybe. Well, what did you witness firsthand at Offutt?
Well, it was basically like your MK Ultra projects, your Monarch, and things like that.
But what did you
Mind
see?
Control. Where they were doing the psychological conditioning, I guess would be the word I'm looking for, to make it to where people would be suggestive, like almost similar to hypnosis, but they could do it using trigger words and things like that.
Did they have some high-tech instrumentation?
Oh, yeah. They had all the electronic gadgets money could buy. It's the government. They have unlimited funds, basically.
And what did you see as far as the equipment or?
Well, I couldn't make out exactly what anything actually was because I don't know the field well enough to actually name.
But did you see subjects, children or people
they'd be
that
hooked
were
up and they'd have like the
electrodes?
little probes on them.
Electrodes?
Electrodes and, electrode cap. And, it was just basically running them through the paces. They looked for people with photographic memories. They looked for people who were, what's the word I'm looking for? Like telepathic, to where they could, one subject would see a card and think of what it was.
ESP?
The other one, ESP, yeah. In another soundproof booth away from them, or another room away from them, would be able to guess or know what the other card was in the other room. And remote viewing, things like that. And so I was actually getting good at that one.
You were getting good at remote viewing?
Yeah.
And how did that work?
It was interesting. The remote viewing was, you could place yourself in another, basically, time.
Well, you're physically remaining in one
here,
place.
but mentally, you were in the other realm and experiencing it with all your senses.
With all your senses?
Yes.
Now that's amazing.
It was bizarre. But I was.
What did they use to enhance that? Were there any drugs given to you, or?
It was usually just repetition of doing it.
Well, how did they instigate that? Because that's almost an out of body experience.
In a way, yes, it was.
Did they put you in a sensory deprivation chamber, or it was dark?
There was different ways.
How did they?
That was one way they could do it. They would put you in a soundproof room to where you just lay in the bed or sit in a chair. They would play music, something that was relaxing, and it was basically a form of hypnosis, of self-hypnosis.
Well, so how would you, were the viewings that you saw remotely, was there an element of fantasy, or was it reality?
It was more reality. I couldn't place who or what or when, but I could make out events that were forthcoming. Things that would happen. And
precognition?
Yes.
And they'd be accurate?
They'd be accurate.
So you actually time traveled, or?
It was cool, yeah.
So it was more than just remote viewing, it was time travel.
Yeah, and you could go
future viewing.
You could go back or you could go forward.
How far would you go?
You could go back in 100 years if you want. And, it was hard to get where I was at. I couldn't pick a precise time. I'd just go back. And that was basically it. I'd actually forgotten about that. And,
Well, going back, it seems like it'd be a little easier because there's.
Back is
it's historically.
The head. It going ahead, and the head gets scary because you see things happening and then you witness it in real life and you don't quite catch what all the nuances, but you'll see something and it's like deja vu. It's just boom, I've been here. And it's like, okay, this happens, that happens. I know what's going to happen next.
Can you give me a for instance?
Well, it's people I would run into. Um, Events like being arrested. There was places that I was taken. There was no way I could have ever seen them before, other than being arrested and being in there. But I knew where I was. I knew what it was and everything. And when they had me in Leavenworth, that was one of the places where I knew I'd been there, seen it before. And, it was just really, it makes your skin kind of crawl.
You know what a lot of people call deja vu is just
Oh, yeah.
is just a smell or just a passing flash. So this was much more than that.
Oh, it was more than that. You would actually see minutes of time. It may not be all congruent. You may see a little piece here and then a minute or two and then a little bit more later or days later or something like that. But when I was traveling, it was the same way. And the thing was, even if you seen it coming, you couldn't do anything to change it. And, that was something that when I went to jail, when I was first arrested, I was starting to get good at. And when I got in jail, the stress level was so high that I lost track of how to do it.
Well, so when you were getting good at it, was it because you were being encouraged by the program you were in?
Maybe. I don't know exactly what, but
it wasn't strictly your own personal choice,
it wasn't my own choice. There was underlying people, it was like being a puppet and having a puppeteer or a handler.
There's a couple major players in the Franklin case from Omaha that have since passed away.
Yeah, Alan Bear, Peter Citron. Let me think, who else?
Is Harold Anderson still around?
I think he is. And
you were out to his farm.
Yeah.
What did you witness out there?
They were doing, little boys mainly. That was the main thing. And they had a little sacrifice going on. It was sort of like a cult worship.
And they sacrificed one of the children.
Yeah.
And that was done how often?
I don't know how often, but I was out there that time.
Was that on a significant date? Like
I don't remember.
Uh,
I don't remember if it was anything like solstice or something.
A satanic high holiday or something.
Yeah. I don't follow the satanic
Well, did they have
stuff.
Rituals that went along with it?
Yeah. They'd have rituals and things like that. They didn't just go out and go, whack. So.
And how many people would attend?
Well, there was probably half a dozen, maybe 10. So.
Were they pretty high-powered people?
I guess so.
Oh, you didn't know all of them?
I didn't know. I made it a point not to know a lot of people. I was told not to ask questions and not to ask who people were.
Remember you said at one time you left copies of your photos with 3 different people, and one of them you could trust, the other one you weren't sure about. Mm-hmm. Did the person that you weren't sure about end up being somebody
I shouldn't have left?
You shouldn't have trusted.
Yes.
Burned again.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, okay.
There's still a set left.
In Colorado?
That I know of. There's still a set left.
For your life insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad you have that because,
Yeah.
given the circumstances, it probably has kept you alive.
Mm-hmm. I know when I was arrested, I done very well in school, but I had nothing to prepare me for what was to come. And, the justice system and that was nothing like what I've been taught in school. It didn't come close. And,
Is there a way for a well-prepared person to come out attaining justice if they've been falsely accused?
rarely.
Is it just the
Takes
stack is just so?
a lot of money. Takes a lot of people behind you. And, if you're just one person, you have to rely on the public defender. You might as well kiss it goodbye because, there's no way you can go to defend yourself. If there's things you need to get, you won't be able to get them. Phone calls are recorded, and we had evidence that would have set me free and would have put a lot of people in jail. And I told my brothers where to go to get it. And it was a bad snowstorm. And they drove 4 hours to get to this abandoned farm place. And when they got there, there was fresh dust from the walls being beaten in with a sledgehammer. And if you want, I'll take you up there tomorrow and show you.
I could get some video of that.
Yeah.
With the bullet hole still there?
Yeah. Yep. It's still there.
And we have.
It's not going to be there much longer because it's going to be torn down.
And it was a nice place. It just didn't
It was
have
a beautiful place. It was a showcase. So.
And somebody ought to be held accountable for that.
Oh, I know it.
And the evidence was destroyed. It was gone.
Yeah, it was taken.
Yeah.
It was taken. They beat everything to a pulp. All your correspondence, if you write anything in jail, they got a picture of, they've scanned it, and they keep a copy.
And what if people write to you?
Same thing. Anything that you get in is scanned and tested for drugs and anything else for contraband.
Do they
even
record the names and addresses of the people who write?
Yes.
And put them on a list?
Yes.
So, but how would you suggest a curriculum for school age kids?
Oh, they need to have, a law class, not just government, but law, and to where they learn the Constitution and memorize it word for word and understand what the words mean, because so many constitutional rights are broken when they are arrested. But the other thing is keep meticulous notes.
You were good about that.
Oh, I was very good about that. I can tell you what I did to within 15 minutes. Every day.
But didn't they confiscate all that?
Everything. I had apple boxes full of notebooks. And they confiscated everything. They confiscated a book I wrote.
A book you wrote about what?
It was basically all the things that I'd been through.
Oh,
and
like a biography.
Yeah, it was Life and Times of a Wandering Vagabond.
That was the title?
Yeah. And, just basically told about the different experiences and people I'd met along the way and the fun we'd had. And the good times, the bad times, the people that made things not so rosy. It told about Franklin and some of the things that went on in there.
That's why it was destroyed.
Yeah. And supposedly the judge had ordered in court that everything was not to be destroyed. It was supposed to be retained and preserved. And, I've never been able to get it back. I've tried. So, I got a big heart, and I try to help people out, and that can be a gift and it can be a detriment.
Well, it's one of the reasons I like you, Rusty, because you are genuinely a good-hearted guy.
Thank you. So, you try to help anybody out, but I'm getting cold and calloused in my old age.
Yeah, but you can't.
Got burned too many times. And
you just have to be more selective, I guess.
And I hate being that way.
Yeah, I know. It's like Johnny Camp refuses to lock his car.
Oh, I got
because he lives in Nebraska, and that's what Nebraska means to him, is you should be able to leave your car unlocked, damn it.
I locked his car one day. we went to Omaha, I believe it was, that day, and we got back, and he pulls in the parking lot, and I was brought up that you go to these towns, we leave our cars unlocked on the farm all the time.
But you go into town.
Town, you lock the doors, because you don't know who's lurking around the corner. And so anyway, I got out of the car, and I wasn't thinking, and I said, John, you forgot to lock your door. I'll get it. And I locked it and slammed the door shut. And by the time I said that, he goes, the keys are in there.
Oh! So we're entering the house. It was where Rusty was staying, where you were staying in 1988. And you were using this shed down there as your dark room, which was actually also a...
Started out as a wash house.
Wash house.
Yeah, they used to have a kettle there under a fire, and Grandma would cook up the laundry. Cook up her lye soap and do the laundry.
So your grandparents lived here?
Yeah, this was Grandma and Grandpa's place. This is where Dad grew up. And it used to be really a nice showcase. All the buildings were painted every year.
Wow, and then when you were incarcerated in, what year did you say that was again?
It would have been probably 97.
97, and you had to talk to your brothers over the phone that was being listened to by the authorities, and tell them where the evidence was that could have gotten you off.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in here in the desk.
Yep.
And so your brothers drove up in the middle of a snowstorm immediately, spent 4 hours driving up here, and this is what they found when they got here.
Yep.
This beautiful, pristine house had been...
The front door had been kicked in. The door had been locked all the time. The front door had been kicked in. They went upstairs and beat the walls with a sledgehammer and ceiling, and they shot up all the appliances and broke every window out of the house.
And took the photographic evidence.
Yeah, took everything that I had.
Took your cameras.
Here. Yeah.
Took what else?
They just basically took notebooks and pictures and camera equipment and just cleaned house.
And they left the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And left military shell casings.
Yeah.
Which you had analyzed.
Yeah.
So who would have access to military ammunition like that?
Hard to say.
FBI?
Probably. That's what we were figuring it was.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's see what they did. Okay. I hope we got enough light, because all the windows have sheet metal boarded up. So they did this scribbling here.
You got your light in front of your lens. Put it over the top of your camera. Like that, yeah.
And so they did the scribbling, which doesn't really look like it says anything.
Barnswallow did the other.
What's that?
Barnswallow did the other.
Oh. And they left a nice little message. You're all dead.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't quite clever enough to spell your correctly. Yeah, we got broken out windows. General ransacking.
Over and you can see the other room. It's the same thing. They bashed the wall in here.
Sledgehammer.
That's where the chimney was up there. And they broke the light. There was a beautiful oval window in the front door. It was all etched glass.
Where was that?
Right there.
That was the front door?
That was the front door. I got busted out. I go over there and you can see in the side room there. Just
Okay.
step over the cushion.
Want me to go?
Yeah, you go first.
Make sure I don't get tangled up. How long do we have with this light?
Probably about a half hour the most.
So here we got more broken out windows.
This was my framing shop.
Oh, look at all this framing. Destroyed. So they did all this too? They pulled all the drawers out?
Yep.
Knocked over the shelves?
That was one of my first waterfall pictures.
Pretty.
That's up in Casper, Wyoming.
With barnwood. Right. That's nice.
And then there's my girlfriend. She got murdered.
What?
Yeah.
What's her name?
Irene Robarney. They found her up in Alaska. She'd been murdered.
When was that?
Oh, a couple years ago.
What's the backstory on that?
I'm not quite sure what the story is on it.
Did it have any connection with you and Franklin?
No, I don't think so.
We're going to go up the stairs.
Kind of steep.
Are you testing this? So what happened here?
This is part of what they broke out.
Or is this just the weathering from the damage?
I'll show you where they started. Kind of grew from there. Tore that room all up.
Tore this room all up? Was this a storage room?
I had everything up, organized and that. He just tore it all up.
Huh.
And here's where they busted the wall up. See where they found
Is this where you were
Come over here.
sleeping?
Yeah.
So they just
Put
bust.
your light right over the top of your camera. And you won't
They
get
just-
that shadows.
They just bashed out that wall.
Yeah, I had a desk sitting here that I had some stuff taped to the underside of it in one of the drawers. And instead of taking the desk apart, they ripped everything apart and beat the desk up.
Did they do the damage to
Yep.
the ceiling?
So,
Tore up the ceiling real good. Broke out the windows. So this is open to the sky now. sledgehammer mark.
Yeah.
And then this was full of pictures in this closet here?
Mm-hmm.
And
They cleaned that out.
took the
They
pictures?
left some, but you see how thick that mirror is? They busted that up.
It's a pretty thick mirror.
Yeah.
That was a wall mirror.
Yeah.
This is downstairs bath.
This is my winter dark room.
Your winter dark room.
The snow got too deep and I couldn't get out to the door. I used this one.
So there's developing trays and chemical jugs. And then the bathtub you probably used for
That was my sink.
for darkroom sink.
Yeah, the bathtub became my darkroom sink from upstairs.
Did they splatter that red paint there?
Mm-hmm.
Supposed to look like blood.
Yeah.
At the same time as the main house was ransacked and destroyed, this little outbuilding shed, which was
My workshop.
the workshop, was ransacked and sledgehammered.
Yep.
And I
I
didn't.
think it's a 1, 2, 3, like third board up, and then go over east here a little bit.
Oh, that's an exit bullet hole.
Yep.
And you had what kind of trees again?
It was an apple orchard, and then there was some cherry trees and a couple plum trees.
With hogs and cherries and plums and apples and veggies, you could live quite well.
Yeah, with lions and tigers and bears. On mine.
That's quite a picture, Rusty.
See, I did actually be skinny once upon a time.
And you said that was leather tux?
Yeah.
I've never heard of such a thing. Oh, yeah. For just a year out of your life of trying to work a job, this is the consequence.
Yeah.
Well, Rusty, I do hope that people will at least consider your case and maybe a few others of extenuating circumstances and give you a break, because I just think it's long overdue.
Oh, thank you.